History has a way of surprising us, but sometimes it straight up doesn't make sense. Every so often, archaeologists, or some random person with a shovel, uncover something that should not exist. We're not talking about ancient coins or pottery. We mean objects so out of place they make experts question everything. From tools that predate humans to intricate machines that baffle modern engineers, here are the 15 ancient discoveries that should have never been found. Number 15. The Iron Pillar of Delhi. A 7-meter-tall iron pillar has stood in Delhi, India, for over 1,500 years, yet somehow it has barely rusted. That might not sound impressive until you realize that modern iron structures corrode all the time, even with today's metallurgy. The pillar, made around 400 AD and inscribed with a dedication to King Chandragupta II, is 99.72% pure iron. Scientists believe a combination of its unique composition and Delhi's dry climate helped preserve it, but even then, it should have rusted at least a little. Some researchers suggest a protective layer of iron hydrogen phosphate formed over centuries, but even modern metallurgy can't fully explain how it's remained so pristine. Whatever the secret is, it proves that ancient Indian blacksmiths had ironworking skills that were centuries ahead of their time, skills we still don't fully understand. Number 14. The Piri Reis map. In 1929, a group of historians stumbled upon a 500-year-old map drawn on gazelle skin by Piri Reis, a respected admiral in the Turkish Navy. At first glance, it seemed like a typical early world map. But then things got weird. Really weird. The map accurately depicts Europe, North Africa, Brazil, and islands in the Atlantic. That's already impressive for 1513. But then there's the real shocker. It also shows Antarctica centuries before it was officially discovered. Even more bizarre, it depicts Antarctica's landmass without ice, something that's been buried under ice for at least 6,000 years. How did a 16th century admiral get this information? Some believe he used ancient source maps from a long-lost civilization, while skeptics argue that it's just coincidence or artistic interpretation. Either way, this map presents an unsettling question. Did someone, thousands of years before us, already map the world? And if so, who? Number 13. The Dropa stones. In 1938, a Chinese archaeological team led by Dr. Chipu Tay ventured deep into the Bayankara Ula Mountains and stumbled upon something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Hundreds of small stone discs buried under layers of dust. Each one was about 9 inches across, had a hole in the center, and featured strange spiral grooves. At first, they seemed like primitive records, but as researchers examined them closer, they found something bizarre. The grooves were actually tiny, intricate hieroglyphics. When translated, they supposedly told the story of the Dropa, a group of thin, small beings who crash-landed in the mountains over 10,000 years ago with no way to return home. Soviet scientists later claimed the discs gave off a weird vibration when placed on a turntable, as if they carried an electric charge. But here's the kicker. None of the Dropa stones are publicly displayed, and much of the research on them has mysteriously vanished. Are they real? If so, someone doesn't want us to know. Number 12. The Voynich manuscript. The Voynich manuscript is basically the Rosetta Stone's evil twin. Discovered in 1912 by Polish book dealer Wilfred Voynich, this 240-page codex is written in a language that no one, not even AI or WW2 code breakers, has been able to decipher. Filled with illustrations of unknown plants, celestial charts, and cryptic symbols, it has baffled scholars for over a century. Is it a medical journal from a lost civilization? A book of alchemical formulas? An alien manuscript? No one knows. Some believe it's an elaborate hoax, while others insist it contains coded knowledge we simply haven't cracked yet. Despite countless efforts to decode its meaning, no one has identified its language, author, or purpose. Until someone finds a key to the cipher, the Voynich manuscript remains one of history's strangest and most frustrating mysteries. Number 11. 2.8 billion-year-old spheres. Deep in South African mines, workers have unearthed small metallic spheres from 2.8 billion-year-old rock. Known as Klerksdorp spheres, these tiny objects have precise grooves running around them, and some are nearly perfect in shape. Here's where things get baffling. According to museum curator Roelf Marx, the spheres are so hard that even steel can't scratch them. Scientists debate whether they're natural mineral concretions, but others argue that their symmetry and fine grooves suggest they were made, which shouldn't be possible, considering humans didn't exist 2.8 billion years ago. Similar spherical objects like Moki marbles in Utah are known to form naturally, but the Klerksdorp spheres still raise questions. If nature made them, it did so with a level of precision that seems unlikely. And if they were crafted, then who or what made them billions of years before history officially began? Number 10. A 2,000-year-old earthquake detector. In 132 AD, while the rest of the world was figuring out how to make better swords, Chinese scientist Zhang Heng was busy inventing something way ahead of its time, an earthquake detector. His bronze seismoscope, decorated with intricate dragon designs, could reportedly detect tremors hundreds of miles away. It proved its worth in 138 AD when it indicated an earthquake in the west of Luoyang, despite no one feeling a thing locally. Officials dismissed it, until a messenger arrived days later confirming that yes, an earthquake had happened, exactly where the device had predicted. Modern attempts to recreate Zhang Heng's invention show that it might have worked using a pendulum or fluid-based mechanics, but no one knows for sure. What we do know is that over 1,000 years before modern seismology, this guy had already built a machine that could predict earthquakes with eerie accuracy. Number 9. The Baghdad Battery. In the 1930s, archaeologists near Baghdad unearthed a 5.5-inch clay jar containing a copper cylinder sealed with asphalt, with an oxidized iron rod inside. On its own, that sounds pretty normal. But in 1940, German researcher Wilhelm Koenig suggested something shocking. This wasn't just any jar. It was an ancient battery. If true, that means people 2,000 years ago, possibly the Parthians, were dabbling in electricity way before anyone in the modern world. Some believe it was used for electroplating gold onto silver, meaning ancient craftsmen might have understood electrical currents. But here's the problem. There's no solid proof that it was ever used as a power source. Critics say it was likely just a storage container and any electrical function was purely accidental. Still, modern recreations have shown that, if filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, it could generate a charge. Whether it was an ancient power source or just a random jar, the Baghdad battery remains one of archaeology's weirdest mysteries. Number 8. Fossils and metal objects that shouldn't exist. Geology gives us a pretty solid timeline of Earth's history, or at least it's supposed to. Every now and then, something turns up that refuses to fit the puzzle. Take, for example, a human-like handprint fossilized in limestone that's 110 million years old, or a fully formed human finger of similar age. Then there's the real kicker, a human-like footprint wearing what appears to be a sandal embedded in rock that's 300 million years old. That's a time when nothing even remotely human was supposed to exist. And if that's not weird, we've also got a 65 million year old metal tube dug up in France and a mysterious metal cube found in a lump of coal supposedly formed millions of years ago. So, are these hoaxes, misinterpretations, or evidence of a lost chapter in history? That depends on whether you trust the textbooks or think they need a rewrite. Number 7. A million-year-old bridge. Stretching 48 kilometers between India and Sri Lanka, a submerged chain of limestone shoals known as Adam's Bridge, or Ram Setu, has been a source of both scientific and mythological intrigue. According to the Hindu epic Ramayana, this was a bridge built by King Rama's army over 1,000,000 years ago. But could there be truth behind the legend? Satellite images show what looks like a man-made structure, and geological studies have found that large boulders sit atop marine sand, suggesting they were placed there, not naturally formed. Dr. Badrinarayanan, a former director of the Geological Survey of India, examined core samples and concluded that parts of the formation seemed artificial. The problem? Dating the bridge is tricky. Sand and coral samples don't provide a clear age for the entire structure, leaving scientists and believers at odds. Was Ram Setu an ancient engineering marvel lost to time, or just an unusual natural formation? Until more evidence surfaces, its true origins remain one of history's biggest mysteries. Number 6. The Saqqara bird. In 1898, archaeologists digging in the Padi Iman tomb in Saqqara, Egypt, uncovered an odd wooden artifact, something that looked suspiciously like an airplane. Dubbed the Saqqara bird, this small sycamore-carved object weighs just under 40 grams and has a wingspan of over 7 inches. Unlike typical Egyptian bird carvings, this one had an unusual feature: a vertical tail, something no real bird has but is common in modern gliders. Some researchers believe the ancient Egyptians might have understood aerodynamics, or at least experimented with flying objects. Egyptian physician and archaeologist Khalil Masiha even suggested it could be proof of early aviation technology. But skeptics argue it was likely just a ceremonial piece or a child's toy. With no supporting historical records, its true purpose remains up in the air, literally. Number 5. The 500,000-year-old spark plug. In 1961, 3 amateur rock hunters searching for geodes near Olancha, California, cracked open a stone expecting to find crystals. Instead, they found something far stranger: a spark plug, perfectly encased in rock. Dubbed the Koso artifact, this discovery made waves because, according to one of the finders, a geologist tested the surrounding material and claimed it was 500,000 years old. That would mean spark plugs, technology from the 20th century, had been around since before early humans even figured out fire. Here's where it gets messy. No one ever identified this supposed geologist, and after years of debate, the artifact vanished. With only X-rays and sketches left to analyze, skeptics believe it was just a modern spark plug that got trapped in quick-hardening sediment. Even so, experts reviewing the evidence admitted there was no proof of a hoax either. So, was it an ancient piece of advanced tech, or just a misunderstood find? Unfortunately, unless the Koso artifact resurfaces, the answer remains as buried as the object itself. Number 4. The ancient Egyptian light bulb. Deep inside the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, Egypt, an ancient carving has sparked one of the strangest debates in archaeology. It shows a long, bulb-shaped object with a serpent-like filament inside, held up by figures that look like they're operating it. Could this be proof that the ancient Egyptians had electricity? Swiss author Erich von Däniken thought so. He even built a working replica of the so-called Dendera light, and sure enough, when powered, it glowed like an early gas discharge lamp. Skeptics aren't buying it. They argue the carving is just a symbolic depiction of a lotus flower and a snake, common motifs in Egyptian mythology. But here's where it gets weird. There's barely any soot in the tombs and temples, despite the absence of windows. If they didn't use open flames for light, what did they use? Whether this was a primitive light bulb or just an artistic choice, the mystery of the Dendera light still hasn't been solved. Number 3. The London hammer. History has a way of throwing curveballs, but this one feels like a fastball from another timeline. In the 1930s, Max and Emma Hahn were out for a stroll when they spotted a rock with wood sticking out of it. Curious, they cracked it open and found something that should have been impossible: a hammer. Not just any hammer, though. This one was embedded in rock supposedly over 400 million years old. That's pre-dinosaur territory. Even weirder, part of the wooden handle had started turning to coal, and some estimates placed the hammer itself at 500 million years old. Naturally, this had creationists buzzing, with Carl Baugh later using it as supposed proof of a pre-flood civilization of giants. But hold on. There's a catch. The hammer's design looks exactly like 19th century American tools, and geologists believe the surrounding minerals simply hardened over time, giving it a misleading, ancient appearance. The final twist? No one can run tests on it anymore because it's locked up in a creationist museum. Number 2. The Antikythera mechanism. When divers stumbled upon a 2,000-year-old shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, they weren't expecting much, just some corroded bronze chunks among the usual sunken relics. But years later, X-rays revealed something mind-blowing: a sophisticated system of gears and dials hidden inside what looked like a simple hunk of metal. This wasn't just some decorative piece. It was an ancient astronomical computer built over 2,100 years ago. It could track the sun, moon, and planets, predict eclipses, and even account for the moon's irregular orbit, something scientists wouldn't fully grasp until 1,500 years later. Nothing like it exists in any historical record. Some experts think this wasn't even the first of its kind, meaning an entire era of advanced technology might have been lost to time. If that's true, then we've been missing a crucial chapter of human history, and we might never get it back. Number 1. 1.8 billion-year-old nuclear reactor. In 1972, scientists analyzing uranium ore from Oklo, Gabon, stumbled on something baffling: natural uranium deposits that had already been depleted. That's not supposed to happen unless the uranium has been through a controlled nuclear reaction. Digging deeper, researchers found that this site appeared to have functioned as a full-blown nuclear reactor, a staggering 1.8 billion years ago. And it didn't just happen once. This thing supposedly ran for 500,000 years. Now, Dr. Glenn T. Seaborg, a Nobel Prize-winning chemist, wasn't convinced this was a freak natural occurrence. He pointed out that sustaining a nuclear reaction needs precise conditions, like the right concentration of U-235, which shouldn't have existed back then. Scientists still debate whether nature somehow pulled off the ultimate science experiment, but skeptics argue that the consistency of the reaction looks too precise, almost engineered. If that's the case, the real question is, engineered by who? Well, let us know. And as we always say, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.